We're back this evening with the second part of our interviews with the candidates for governor. I'd like to now welcome Republican candidate for governor, Clayton Williams. As you know, Mr. Williams, there will be no opening or closing statements, and I'll just be here to try to make sure that we all get our answers in and our questions in on time. But first, right to the point, the new campaign spending records came out again, showing you spent $20 million so far in this campaign, $8 million of your own money. Some people are saying that you wanted to buy this election from the beginning. Is that what you're trying to do, buy this election?
Well, that's not correct, but it is a fact that I've put nearly $8 million of my own money. When you're not a political figure, have no political name ID, then you put some of your own money to tell people who you are, where you stand on issues. I've done that. This last investment, we put $1.4 million in the campaign. We'd raised about $9 million to match that. Really, I did to match the contributions to my opponent from the liberal trial lawyers camp.
Oh, I mean, so I mean, I don't think $8 million quite matches what she's got. And you're saying that she's got about $1 million there.
Well, I've received about $8 million in contributions in the general election from people who believe as I do, and I put about $1.4 million in. I guess I'd spend $9 million, and I put $1.4 million in.
Okay.
Well, now, Mr. Williams, one of the real realities of this is that you have $8 million that you've loaned to your campaign, and if you win this election, you're going to expect to have that money paid back, which means as the sitting governor, you're going to have people who want appointments to state boards, who want to do state business, given your campaign, which will funnel that money right back to you personally. And you've already said in the Amarillo paper that T. Boone Pickens approached you and said that he would very much like an appointment to the A&M Board of Regents or the UT Board of Regents. So why isn't there an expectation when people pay you that money back that they're not just trying to buy some piece of state government from you?
Well, G, number one, is against the law. Number two, when you put $8 million, you invest, I care about Texas. When you put $8 million in, I don't belong to anybody. And I've promised no appointment of any sort to anybody, nor will I until and if I win.
But we shouldn't be surprised if Mr. Pickens is on the Board of Regents of a major university under your governorship.
If he's qualified, he might be, but I've made no such promise.
Sure, no problem.
Let me ask you another question about something else. You're running as a businessman. That's one of the strengths of your campaign and of your past. And yet, Clayton Communications lost money, I think about every year, at least on an annual basis, until you sold it. When you sold it, according to our analysis, you sold it for $15 million less than you had in total put into it. Clayton National Bank lost money every year since at least 1986 until this last 2 quarters, and I think only after your controversial car loan program was in effect. Is that the way the state government ought to be run, the way you run some of your businesses?
Let me tell you how I run my business, Wayne. In 1980, I owed personally $500 million on oil and gas, real estate, banking, agriculture, and I paid back every single penny of that, paid out of debt. The 2 companies you mentioned, I started Clayton Communications in 1984. Oil was $30 a barrel. It was a startup high-tech growth company which I intended to fund from $30 a barrel oil. Well, as you know, oil fell to $10 a barrel, and I was lucky that I didn't lose my entire investment. I had to change out the management midway to be able to recoup most of my investment, but we built, with good men and women at my side, we built Clayton Communications into the largest Texas-based long-distance company. We were the first to transmit data over fiber optics. We were the first all digital. And I was proud to recoup most of my investment because a lot of people in Texas from 84 to 88 went broke. And I got most of my investment back. My real estate development still bears the Clayton name, my wife and I. Our bank didn't go broke. Many banks in Texas did go broke. So we've been through tough times in Texas. And I'm just proud to tell you that I've met every financial commitment.
Well, one of the reasons your bank didn't go broke, at least according to our analysis, is that over the last 2 quarters, your bank has made a lot of money under this car loan program, where we talk to people who say your bank and these car dealers, to get loans through your bank, were forced to buy insurance that they didn't want. Did you force people to buy insurance they didn't want?
We did not. My management told me we complied with the law. I believe that we have. But the reason our bank didn't go broke, number one, I put a lot of money into that bank.
Right.
To prevent the bank from going down. I didn't want our bank to lose its reputation, and I didn't want to cost the taxpayers money. The car loan, I'm told by my managers that they've complied with every legal requirement. But let me tell you what, if in any case somebody's done wrong, I'll be the first to hold the wrongdoer accountable. I'll be the first.
Well, you know, look at the examples here. You have a guy who came in there with his wife trying to buy car insurance. Get a car loan, and he was told he had to buy insurance, disability insurance. So in the event that he was disabled, the car would be paid for. This was a man who was totally disabled. When the guy at the car shop called your bank, they said, yes, he has to buy the insurance. Insurance, it's totally worthless. And the loan was at 18%, the maximum allowed. The car insurance was totally worthless to this kind of man. I don't know if that was against the law or not, but isn't that wrong?
Well, I don't know anything about that, but what you and I both know, that this all stems from politics. Be interesting to see how much of this is going on after the election.
Yeah, but whether it stems from politics or not, if you didn't know what was going on in your own bank, what does that say about your capability to be a strong business leader?
Well, look here, I've created 26 companies, Bob Ray, and I'm not a micromanager like Jimmy Carter. The reason I've been successful in many arenas, my background was agriculture. My degrees in college was animal science, but I've been successful in oil and gas, high technology, real estate. My method of operation, and I'll do the same if I'm elected governor, is to delegate authority and responsibility and then hold that management accountable. I'll do the same in government.
Be clear on one point.
Mm-hmm.
Were you or were you not, as a member of the board of your bank, there when the bank made the decision or the decisions to go with this car loan program? The car loan program that has made more money than I think any single program in the last 6 months for your bank. Were you there?
I was not there. The reason I know I wasn't there, the people, my management have told me. I haven't been on the board in some time. I'm not running from responsibility. Second, this bank has made money because I've infused substantial capital into the bank. Mm-hmm. The car loan program is not highly profitable.
It's not highly profitable?
No, it's not. No.
Well, I'd like to move on to another issue, and that deals with public education. Mr. Williams, you've been, in the beginning of your campaign, you were strongly in favor of the voucher system, favored public school children being in position of picking the school they want to go to. But you've been backing off and talked about having the program only in the first grade, or talked about a pilot program. And last week you said you're not in love with the voucher system. You favor parental choice. Why are you backing off from this program, which the public perceives to be your answer to the problems in public education in Texas?
I'm not backing off the least bit. I've been in this political arena nearly 22 months. And I didn't come to a position on education. I'm not an educator. I've done a lot of listening. I've gone to a lot of schools that failed. I've been to a lot that were successful. The ones that were successful have the parents involved. I listened to the choice program. I listened to Tom Luce as he espoused the merits of it. I've read, there were substantial articles in the Dallas Morning News talking about the merits of parental choice. So I've listened to it, and here's where I am. There's two basic directions I think we should go in education. I believe in the vision of parental choice. I believe in it because I believe that we must empower the parents, we must involve the parents in the direction their kids go. When you give them a piece of paper, whether you call it a voucher, certificate, that lets that parent put their kid in any school that they think fits that child, and empower the parent and let competition between schools be the engine that drives education. Okay, now.
But you're assuming that competition, that the schools can't compete.
If I might, I'd like to finish my thought, because I think that it has merit. This is a new vision, a new program. It's being tried in Wisconsin by a minority group. They think it's going to work. There will be bugs in any new program. There's always resistance to change in any new program. I'd like to start with the first grade. And let's say even in a small town, there's a kindergarten teacher who has a successful kindergarten operation. Fine, the next year, let's let her have the first grade. And if that's successful, if parents see results, second, third, so you move into it gradually. That's my vision for the long-term future. Now let's get to the failed system today. we're spending 53% more money on education, and we had again this last month another drop in the test scores. So I'd like to do some basics. I'd like to return control of our schools back to the school board, back to the parents, more parental involvement. And one example, and I'd like to disenfranchise the state bureaucracy. I'd like to, for example, re-elevate the principal to the position that he or she had some years back, hold the principal accountable for good teaching, and take the career ladder and a lot of those bureaucratic tests and throw them out the window where they belong.
And when you say
And I'll be just to say, let's move to correction of the existing system where we can. But the vision that many people have, it's not my idea, I've just bought it, is the parental choice, empower the parents, voucher system, and you have to start first grade, second, third, moving into that.
But educators will say that your system is going to lead to chaos, and you're also assuming that all the school districts will cooperate. What happens when you have children from one part of one school district rushing to another school district? After a while, you're going to have to develop a quota system because those so-called good schools can only take so many children. Have you taken any of that into consideration?
I have. I believe so basically in competition. Let me give you one example. We talked about Clayton Communications. I started that company, Wayne, in 1984, and the average price of a AT&T phone call from point A to point B was 44 cents a minute. When I sold that company in 1988, it was 17 cents a minute. Mm-hmm. Look at what competition did. I believe in competition. That's a system.
Competition, as you're describing, will eliminate some schools and create overcrowding.
I'm trying to come to that. This is not going to happen all at once. In cities, there's more opportunity for it to happen faster. Like the Skyline Magnet School I visited here in Dallas. Very successful. I just believe that I believe first that the system, the status quo, many people are interested in protecting the existing system. I don't care about the system. I care about teaching the kids.
Well, you're talking you're talking about a program that could, if it works, is a program that could happen down the road, beginning now, gradual steps down the road. And yet when we ask you, do you have an idea about how to deal with the court order which says that the state school system is unconstitutional?
Yep.
You say, well, here's some ideas, some vouchers. Well, in fact, your voucher program has nothing to do with that. Isn't that true?
Well, I would not do with what you're talking about. Are you talking Edgewood Kirby?
Absolutely.
Right. Edgewood Kirby, I basically agree with Edgewood Kirby. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. Where I have a problem, I don't have a problem that the poor school districts need the same amount of revenue that property rich. My problem, I'm against the transfer of funds from property rich to property poor. I believe we should take that out of the general revenue. But my objection to the legislative inaction they just finished was that you just put a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid. I want to really fix the system with the outline, get it back to local control. I believe the closest government to people is the best. But my vision for the future is the voucher system, empower the parents, and bring competition into play. I think it's exciting. I have more people tell me that's the real future for all Texas kids.
You're talking about an experimental program, so that leads me to believe that you really don't have a plan for dealing with education funding if you're talking about an experimental program.
Let's talk about funding if I might. That's a good opportunity. Private schools? Private schools are coming out with the same curriculum, teaching the same kid, the same group of courses for a third less money, and they're turning out 40 or 50% better test scores. Now, there's a few reasons why part of that is, but the main reason it is that they don't have the hindrance and the handicap of this great bureaucracy. And I believe so, teachers in private schools are happy and they're paid less money. Teachers in public schools are distressed over the career ladder, over all the bureaucratic mandates, and I believe, why can't we make the drive from private schools and the success from private schools available to all the kids in Texas through competition? The basics, the foundations.
Where do you get the money, I think is the question.
The money comes from that saving. Let me say it again. Private schools are doing a better job for a third less money.
So do away with the public school system?
No. Then I had a principal here in Dallas give me the best. He said, we were talking about this, been well over a year ago, competition, private schools. He said, Clayton, you take the bureaucratic shackles and mandates of my high school, and we'll compete with a private school any day. I'd like to
that may be fine down the line, but we're talking about a court order that you have to meet by next year to equalize, and you just sat here and you said you don't want to take the money from the rich schools, give it to the poor schools, you want to take it from the general tax dollars. But that's how the system works now.
Well, I disagree, R.G. First, the legislature met, they came out with a plan that takes care of the present. The judges overruled that, but I believe in appeal of that, and I believe that won't stand. I think that it will stand, in my opinion, that the work they did last year is going to stand up. That's for the present, but for the future, and I'm talking start next year in the first grade and the next in the second, as you work out the problem, the competition between schools, empowering the parents, is the way to go. I care about the pupils. I'm not concerned about a system that's really not responding. It's not only in Texas, it's across the nation.
Mr. Williams, let me try to get an answer to this. Let's assume that that does not stand up what the legislature did. Where do we get the money to pay and make these schools equal across the state? I mean,
well, why don't we first let that happen? I mean, you had...
you're going to be governor, and surely you've got a plan.
Well, wait a minute, Bob Ray. You had the legislature, the House, the Senate, the governor worked for months and months. They finally came up with a very hard-fought plan. I'm not going to come in here and say, I've got a detailed plan, dollars here, dollars there. But I'll tell you what I do believe. I believe that the state bureaucracy as a whole is unresponsive. It's not meeting the needs. I believe the public schools are not doing the job that the private schools are. And when something's broke, you start fixing it or you change. I want to start fixing what's broke. I want to start changing education.
I guess the key question here is you keep talking about making improvements in the system that will take time to do. The court has set a deadline of, I think it's September 1st of next year.
Then we're going to appeal that, and they're going to lose that.
And if the state does not meet it by that deadline, the court will order that all state funds through public schools in Texas be cut off. So I guess the question is, how are you going to meet those court mandates?
Well, let's let that court be overruled first. It's going to. And I'll face that problem when it comes. I come here today with specifics about the remedy, return it home to the local school board, empower the, stop the mandates without funding. In other words, this year, the legislature passed 200 mandates from Austin to all the school districts in Texas telling them to raise their taxes to carry out Austin mandates. You know, we had a tea party in Boston a couple of hundred years ago about that called taxation without representation. My vision for the future is parental choice while we get back to local control, parental involvement, in the existing system.
While we're talking money, which you seem not to really want to talk about.
Third less, private schools, Bob Ray did it for a third less. What's wrong with a school that does the job for a third less money, 50% better?
Here's one thing that's wrong with it. Private schools are not obligated in many cases to have some of the programs for special, gifted, and disabled students. There's one. You want to get rid of those programs in the public schools?
No, I do not. And when I mentioned a while ago, when I said there's some exception, when I said some exception for the gifted, for the handicapped, in other words, it's not 100%, but basically a third less for 50% better scores with some exception. To me, that's clearly the way to go. Competition.
Let's move on to some other problems. I think that you proposed 60,000 new prison beds.
Yes.
20,000 of those would be boot camp style things.
Yes, sir.
That's your answer. I'd want to ask you how you're going to pay for that too. Is that out of general revenue?
No, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Do I have a chance? Let me give you my war on drugs. For example, and
wait, first, how are you going to pay for it? Just
okay.
Real simple.
My drug war, $1.5 billion, has 6 specific cuts. Been through the battle. Everybody doesn't agree, but y'all talk to the liberals in Austin, not the conservatives, when you fought that. Number one, I want to freeze on state hiring, and I exclude education, health care, and criminal justice. 7% cut in state operating expenses. With the same 3, I want to repeal the prevailing wage, 10% less automobiles, sell the 75 state print shops, bid the work out to the best bidder, like we do the highways, sell the 61 state airplanes except criminal justice, bid the flying work out to the private sector. $1.6 billion, but let me tell you, there's lots more savings than that. Let's take the airplanes. That's just for the savings a private contractor would come up with. Let's take, I picked on one region from A&M, a state airplane going back and forth. I saw a state airplane in Victoria last week that was on a shopping trip. Wow. I want it privatized.
Which one was that?
Rather than going down the list, there's so many gross dollars. I want to know
which
when
one
that's
was
president. I've got it. I'll give it to you later.
Okay, I know.
Give it to us now.
I don't have the number. My guys have it.
Okay, but I know you have a litany of things that you want to do. 60,000 prison beds.
Yes,
how many beds for drug treatment would you propose?
Here's what you have. Like Charlie Terrell says. Well, no, excuse me. Let me backtrack. My plan is beefed up law enforcement for the supply. Right. That won't do it by itself. Right. Increase penalties on the users. Teenagers smoking marijuana, pull a driver's license. Prison, 20,000 maximum security, 20,000 intermediate, $20,000 for boot camps. Boot camps to save these kids.
How many?
Then I have
For drug treatment. Should we have
I'll
that?
get there fast.
Okay,
I'll get there.
We're running out of time.
I want to start teaching kids about drugs beginning in kindergarten. $200 million a year for help for at-risk kids. You got to start with prevention, work on rehabilitation. I'm saying double the proof. I drove from, when I got the endorsement a while ago from the Teamsters, we drove past houses that had bars. Our own people are behind bars because they fear the criminal. Today, the average criminal served 1 day in 6. I want more prisons, not because we're going to punish them, for protection. Now, the next thing, 1 day out of 6, we have some pretty good programs at the TDC, but the criminals are not there long enough to learn to read, to recover from their chemical addiction. Over 80% of the kids in the penitentiary
Keep them in jail longer for treatment?
Yeah. They're not there long enough to be able to rehabilitate. We have some excellent education programs. Nearly 70% are illiterate. We need to keep them there long enough to teach them to read. We need to keep them there long enough to recover from chemical addiction. That's Charlie Terrell's point, and I subscribe to that.
They won't be able to do that in 90 days in a boot camp.
Oh, see, in the boot camp, you're taking that beginning criminal, that kid that started to a life of crime, nearly always chemically dependent. Boot camps are working excellent. Georgia, California, it's a new deal. You're shaking them up with discipline. These are kids that are on drugs, not used to discipline. I want to take them and shake them up. Just what I had in the Army at Fort Bliss.
But
and
even
give them military drills, 5:30 in the morning calisthenics, drug counseling, and teach them meaningful work. The boot camp I visited, I'm hurrying. In Georgia, they were cutting grass. I thought, let's do like the WPA. Let's bust some rocks. Take the rocks, build campsites.
they're not going to be able to get jobs busting rocks when they get out.
Picnic table, 90 days. If you've listened to my talks, I propose a 6-month work camp after the 90 days where we continue to teach them meaningful work, education, pay them, and we use deferred adjudication. They make the boot camp, they make the work camp, we take the conviction and throw it out the window.
Okay, I think we're not going to learn how exactly where the money's going to come from. Let me switch gears just for a second. As you know, we have a constitutional crisis that's been trying to be addressed with Proposition 1 on the ballot. What's your position on Proposition 1 and why?
Now, Proposition 1 is which? Excuse me.
Well, it's the only one on the ballot. It's the governor's appointment.
Oh, on the Education Commissioner?
No.
No, it's changing the timing on gubernatorial appointment and confirmation.
Are you aware of the problem?
I'm not aware of the problem.
There was a major problem in the legislature last year about a whole series, hundreds of gubernatorial appointments, which is the major power, one of the major powers you would have as governor.
Yeah.
Whether those were good or not, because of the timetable of when the legislature...
Between the changing of the guard.
That's correct.
Well, I think it certainly needs remedy. I don't know, I really haven't taken a position
Mr. Williams, if you don't know what this proposition is or where you are on it, doesn't that underscore Ann Richards' criticism that you really don't have very much knowledge of state government?
Well, she's not. I'm not a politician.
Yeah. But you are running for governor.
Well, but I can read, and if you'd put that in front of me, it'd take me about 30 seconds to give you.
Haven't you already voted?
I had the highest grade points in the School of Agriculture at A&M my last semester.
Mr. Williams,
you put it in front of me, I can read. I'm a very active
haven't you already voted? Well, hasn't that already
Yes, I have voted.
So wasn't that proposition?
Right down the ticket.
Well, how about how'd you vote on Proposition 1?
I voted for it. I think I voted.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Williams, this raises a question again of leadership. We can draw a number of parallels between you and the current governor, Clements. He's a millionaire, a businessman, a non-politician just like you.
Non-polished?
Non-politician. Yet during his 2 terms, he refused to approve more spending for prison beds, so now we have the early release problem of inmates. And like you, he vowed not to raise taxes, and yet we've seen a record tax increase during his term. So would voting for you be like voting for another 4 more years of Bill Clements, and is that necessarily good for Texas?
Let me tell you the main difference. Bill Clements fought a totally Democrat-controlled or liberally controlled legislature. We now have in the House, and we expect gains, enough Republicans in the House to sustain my veto. So I'll have a stronger backing than he had. Number 2, I'm my own person. I have great respect for Bill, but I've talked about doubling the prisons. I've done it all along. I've talked about how we're going to pay for it. I've talked about offering hope to kids that are dropping out. Dropout's a major problem in Texas. I offer a plan to pay 2 years college-free tuition and books to kids that come from families making less than $30,000 a year. The kids got to earn it, make a B, stay out of trouble with the law, submit to random drug testing to help them stay off drugs, And I've also proposed how to pay for that. $32 million a year in costs to offer hope and encouragement and incentives to kids. And I've offered 3 cuts in efficiencies to pay for that.
You'll be a much better governor than Bill Clement.
Well, I'm not going to pick on Bill, but I'll have a lot more help in the House than Bill had, yes.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, Mr. Williams, that some of your remarks over the past few months have gotten people thinking that you're a sexist based on what you've said about women. You are, aren't you?
No, I absolutely am not. But thank you for an opportunity for that. I made a mistake, and I've apologized for that. But let me tell you what I have done. I've introduced the toughest slate into the campaign on rapists and people who do violence against women. We've called for DNA fingerprinting, where you can identify that rapist without traumatizing the woman. We've called for flat time to rapists. The average rapist serves 3.5 months for the damage they do.
Do you support capital punishment for a rapist?
We were asked that question today, and if you'll put it right, in extreme cases, I would consider very seriously the capital punishment for rapists.
Mr. Williams, most women would consider rape an extreme case.
In the old days, Wayne, we hung them. We didn't put up with that.
What's an extreme case?
What is an extreme
what's a
case?
non-extreme case of rape?
Well, we're going to have to work through that, but I will consider capital punishment. I'd like to answer one other part, Bob, on yours. My attitude to women. My companies, which you brought up, Clayton, as my wife is an equal partner. The first of 14 employees of mine to become millionaires was a woman, Nona Riggs. The chief financial officer in my company is Kim Jones, a woman. The chief financial officer of my petroleum operation is a woman. I'm not done. I've done a lot of things. Innovative Solution. I funded and sponsored that and paid for all my female employees to go to it, which teaches women how to protect themselves from violence. I have an excellent record. I made an insensitive, dumb remark, but I have a good record with women.
With that kind of record, did you then advise the president not to veto the 1990 Civil Rights Bill? Or did he do the right thing in your opinion?
He did the right thing, with an exception.
I mean, that would have helped women and minorities in the workforce. Many of us believe.
All right, now here, I believe in the Civil Rights Bill, but that had quotas. That had language alluding to quotas, according to what President Bush said. I support President Bush in his attitude that quotas limit opportunity rather than floor opportunity. Let me predict this for you. There will be another civil rights bill that eliminates quotas, and it will be signed, and I'll support it.
A watered-down one.
But I'm saying just the quotas. There's the problem.
Okay.
I do not believe quotas is the answer.
Okay, and just one more thing. Where would you stand on abortion? We asked Ms. Richards this. I mean, if a bill came to your desk, yes or no answer, really.
Okay.
And it had abortion, except for the case of rape, incest, mother's health.
To the mother.
If a bill, excuse me, if a bill came to my
sign it or
desk,
veto it? We're almost out of time.
if a bill came to my desk, life, incest, rape, incest, life, I would sign it. I would, but let me go
I'm
a
sorry,
step further.
I can't.
I
We're out
said
of
yes,
time.
I would sign it.
We're out of time. We're out of time. We got it. Thank you.
Parental
Mr.
consent. You
We
didn't
got
want
it,
to get
Ms.
that
Williams. Thank you very much for joining us.
Parental consent, let me
That
get
brings
that.
us to the end of this program in the Decision 90 series. Please keep watching and do vote on the 6th tonight.
Thank you.